National monuments draw crowds from all over the world, but many people don't realise the kinds of secrets hidden within. Some of these you might expect out of a Nicolas Cage movie. Today we're taking a look at 5 secrets hidden inside national monuments.
Number 5.
If you've ever travelled through New York, chances are that you've passed through Grand Central Terminal. Opened in 1913, it's a National Historic Landmark and sees more than 20 million visitors each year, and that's not including those who go there to actually use the transport network. With 44 platforms, it has more than any other station in the world, and amazingly, they're all underground. From there you can connect with routes across the city and the country. During rush hour, there's a train that departs every 58 seconds. While you may be familiar with the platforms, the art installations, the restaurants and the exhibition spaces, do you know that the station is also home to one of the most exclusive tennis courts in the city? It's been there since the 1960s and is now operated by the Vanderbilt Tennis Club. It had fallen into a state of disrepair, however, in 1984 Donald Trump saw an opportunity to renovate the space and make it available to the super wealthy or super famous who are willing to pay vast sums to gain access. His lease expired in 2009, which is when the current operators took over, and while it's not under such a veil of secrecy anymore, it costs between $150 and $200 an hour to hire. So it isn't exactly affordable to most New York residents. The main court itself is located just behind the facade window of the station, so there's truly nowhere quite like it in the world to play tennis.
Number 4.
Visitors to Rome will usually fly into the Fiumicino Leonardo da Vinci Airport, and upon arrival are greeted by a towering 60-foot tall bronze statue of the legendary inventor and artist. It was made by a Bulgarian artist called Asen Pikov, who won a competition to design a statue for the airport, and it was installed there in 1960. Millions upon millions of people have passed it since, but it was only in 2006, when renovations were needed, that it was realised that the statue held a secret. About 30 feet up there was a small hatch, and inside workers found 2 parchments, one of them which was written in Latin and details its use all the way back to ancient times. The other parchment contained the names of everyone who had been present for the unveiling, including the sculptor himself, the President of the Italian Republic, and several other politicians who would also go on to become important figures in Italy. Next time you pass the statue, if you see anyone staring at it through binoculars, it could well be because they're trying to see the hatch, or even discover if there's another one hidden somewhere else on the monument.
Number 3.
The Supreme Court is the most important court in America, where some of the most contentious cases are decided by the justices. The court itself is located on the 4th floor of the building, and it's from there that the decisions are made that affect the entire country. It's one of the most important institutions in the American legal system. But despite being known as the highest court of the land, it isn't even the highest court in the building. In fact, on the 5th floor there's a basketball court that's used by employees. It was originally used as a storage room for legal journals, but was converted at some point in the 1940s to provide an exercise facility for staff. Over the following decades, wooden backboards and nets were installed, and while it isn't regulation size, it offers a perfect place to shoot some hoops when court isn't in session. There's a sign at the entrance to remind people not to use it while the court is in sitting. There have been a few occasions where people have played and the noise can be heard downstairs, which leads to the court justices having to send a clerk to remind players to be quiet.
Number 2.
Built between 1887 and 1889 for Paris's World Fair that year, residents of the city weren't particularly impressed by the Eiffel Tower at first. They saw it as a blight on the skyline, but soon became accustomed to it, and is now one of the most recognisable and most visited landmarks on Earth. For 41 years it was also the tallest man-made structure in the world. The man behind it was Gustav Eiffel, and he had to combine extraordinary engineering and scientific and political strategies to make it a reality. He was soon the envy of Paris though, not because of his fame or increasing wealth, but because he had also become the owner of the most sought after real estate in the city. He had built his very own private apartment on the top level of the Eiffel Tower. It was there that he hosted esteemed guests such as world leaders and the greatest scientific minds of the time, and despite countless efforts from people who wanted to rent it just for a night, he refused them all. It's not exactly the largest of spaces, and recently a section of it had been visible to visitors to the tower. He did, however, have it wallpapered, and it was fitted with chairs, cabinets, and even a grand piano, which at nearly 1,000 feet above the ground is no mean feat.
Number 1.
Mount Rushmore was conceived and designed by Gutzon Borglum between 1927 and 1941. It features 4 60-foot tall representations of some of America's greatest presidents that are carved into the rock face of the Black Hills in Keystone, South Dakota. One of the main aims of the project, as well as to celebrate the United States of America, was to increase tourism to the area, and it certainly achieved what it set out to do. There have been rumours of secrets around Mount Rushmore ever since it was completed, however. Could it, as some believe, have been a way to mark hidden treasures or something else more nefarious? What we do know is that it was never completed, because the original intent was to sculpt the 8 presidents down to their waists. Borglum did also create a huge 8,000 square foot vault behind the heads. He died before this vault could be completed, but known as the Hall of Records, the plan was to use it to store some of the nation's most valuable artifacts. In 1998, officials in charge of overseeing the monument decided to use the vault for just that. While it's not ornate or as grand as Borglum envisioned, it now contains a copy of the US Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, and a biography of Borglum, including descriptions of the 4 presidents of Mount Rushmore. All of this is hidden behind a half-ton slab of granite, so it's not accessible to visitors. But perhaps, several centuries from now, the descendants of Nicolas Cage may find their way into it and reveal to the world what this strange monument actually is.
Check out one of our other amazing videos.